highest alert. U.S. forces on notice, the threat of a possible terrorism attack overseas. How real is the danger? Clearing the air, protecting national treasures from pollution, and targeting gas-guzzling SUVs. Tonight, the government gets ready to act. Mixed messages. 2 weeks, 2 different tests, 2 different results. What's the driver to think? Tonight, we sort out the differences. And in-depth, Lifeline. This machine can detect diseases before you're even sick, but there are risks, the marvels and hidden dangers of the full-body scan.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. Throughout the Middle East tonight, American forces are at their battle stations. U.S. ships have been pulled out of a port, and military intelligence is working overtime to determine if threats against Americans are real. In this world of terrorism, the Pentagon is taking no chances tonight, especially after the bombing of the USS Cole and the announcement this week of the indictment of 13 Saudi Arabians for the bombing of the American military barracks in Saudi Arabia. NBC's Jim Miklashevsky has the latest now for us from the Pentagon. Jim, what's going on there?
Tom, U.S. officials are taking this latest threat very seriously because they say the warnings came from several different sources, all saying the same thing, that an attack against Americans in the Persian Gulf is imminent. U.S. military forces throughout the Persian Gulf are at the highest state of alert tonight at ThreatCon Delta. All Navy ships have been ordered to put out to sea, weapons locked and loaded. 2,200 Marines cut short an amphibious exercise in Jordan. Thousands of American forces in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia combat ready. Why? Sources tell NBC News U.S. intelligence intercepted at least 3 separate threats in the past 24 hours, but all were chillingly similar, threatening attacks against American forces in the Persian Gulf. No specific targets were named, but each threat did mention the same day, next Monday, June 25th. That's the 5-year anniversary of the terrorist bombing of Khobar Towers in Saudi Arabia, killing 19 American servicemen. Only yesterday, the U.S. indicted 14 suspects for the Khobar bombing. And 2 days ago, the release of a video from indicted terrorist Osama bin Laden, calling for a new wave of attacks against American targets. And tonight, the State Department issued a travel warning for all Americans to beware of the increased terrorist threat. Now, officials here admit this could all be a false alarm, but no one's willing to take that chance. Tom?
Thanks very much, NBC's Jim Miklashevsky at the Pentagon tonight. And the Bush administration today put certain power plants on another kind of alert. The new administration gave final approval to a federal rule to help clean up the air. And as NBC's David Gregory reports tonight, the Bush White House doesn't need any more negative reviews on the environment right now.
Today's proposed order is meant to clear the air at the country's 156 national parks. Tourists who make nearly 300 million visits to the parks a year come to see pristine views now spoiled by haze created by emissions from coal-burning power plants, even those hundreds of miles away. On a clear day at Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee, you can see for 100 miles. But when the smog sets in, that range is cut down to 20 miles. This order, first proposed by the Clinton administration, would force utilities to put in place tougher pollution controls. Environmental groups hailed the action today, but are still skeptical, citing the reliance on coal in Bush's energy plan.
It's going to be quite a challenge for the administration to reconcile their desire to favor their coal-producing friends, and yet at the same time try to deliver on the promise of cleaner air in our national parks.
Today's announcement comes one day after the president visited an Alabama state park promising more money for land conservation. Recent polls show eroding confidence in Bush's commitment to the environment, a misguided perception, say top advisors.
When we keep taking the actions that back up the words, they're going to have to give him credit for what's happening.
For now, the president is getting mostly blamed, and the biggest culprit is his energy plan. This week, the Republican-dominated House, citing environmental worries, voted against oil and gas exploration off Florida's coast and in millions of acres of national monuments. Politically, top advisors admit the president seems to be getting outmaneuvered by his environmental critics. Today's order, part of an effort to neutralize the damage that only seems to be getting worse. David Gregory, NBC News, the White House.
And another battle over energy and the environment is shaping up over cars and SUVs. Most Republicans have long opposed efforts to force automakers to make vehicles more fuel efficient. But many of them are now changing their minds as gas prices rise and energy becomes a hot political issue. Here's NBC's Robert Hager.
Likely soon, the first big effort in a quarter century to force improvements in the miles per gallon rating of vehicles, particularly gas-guzzling SUVs and pickups, to conserve energy and cut down pollution. The chairman of the House Energy Subcommittee today.
The federal government should consider whether it's reasonable to increase the fuel economy of cars and light trucks.
For SUVs and pickups, from an average 20 miles a gallon now to perhaps 23, would make them more expensive but save 1 million barrels of oil a day. And a second proposal today to also improve mileage by encouraging alternative energy vehicles through tax breaks. The newest, combo gas and battery powered, the Toyota Prius and smaller two-seat Honda Insight. Let's take a look under the hood of the Honda Insight. And it's all centered right here. A 73 horsepower, 3-cylinder gasoline engine and a separate electric motor. And a tiny computer inside there that senses when to switch back and forth. Powered not by the car's regular battery, but by power generated off the use of the brakes and stored in electric batteries kept under here. Unlike older pure electric cars, hybrids don't have to be plugged in for recharging. They can go fast and are 90% cleaner than other cars. And the mileage? Prius owner Jeff Foreman.
Well, I'm just thinking how lucky I am to have a car that gets 50 miles a gallon.
And the Insight gets up to 70. But the hybrids cost $20,000, and that's more than other cars that small. And if U.S. automakers follow through on promises to make a few bigger hybrids, SUVs, in 2 or 3 years, it'll be even more expensive.
The market share isn't going to come until we get hybrids into more mainstream vehicles and bring the price down.
For now, there are only 16,000 hybrids in the U.S. compared to 17 million other vehicles. Why experts say for real progress towards saving energy or clearing pollution, forcing automakers to increase the gas mileage is the way to go. Robert Hager, NBC News, Washington.
Now to another contentious issue involving pickup trucks and safety ratings. The government has released new truck crash test scores, and the Ford F-150 is the best-selling vehicle in America. It scored well. This just weeks after a separate set of data that called into question the truck's safety. What should consumers believe? Here's NBC's Lee Thompson.
Consumers are now making their vehicle buying decisions based on safety, and car companies are touting the results of crash tests.
Better overall than Insurance Institute crash tests.
But today, there's confusion over the Ford F-150. The government has announced it is giving 5 stars to the popular truck, its highest rating. But the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, funded by the insurance industry, gave the F-150 its worst rating.
This is not survivable space anymore.
How can there be such a disparity between the two tests?
The government's test does not really test the structural design of the vehicle because the whole front end takes the load. In this test, only part of the front end is taking the load.
The government tested the F-150 by sending it head-on into a flat wall at 35 miles per hour. It's a very good measure of how well the seat belts and airbags work. The Institute crashed the truck at 40 miles per hour, slightly off-center, similar to something that might happen car to car at an intersection.
This is as bad as it gets in terms of crash performance.
Is this a fatality?
One possible outcome could be a fatal injury.
If you owned this truck, what would you do?
I'd get rid of it. I wouldn't put my family, my wife, or myself in a vehicle like this.
Ford said today the two tests are very different, but they do complement one another. It says in real-world accidents, government statistics show the F-Series trucks do an outstanding job in protecting occupants. Ford is considering a design change in its F-150, but says to pass the Institute's test, it may have to compromise the truck's ability to pass the government's test. The Insurance Institute points out many cars pass both tests, and there's no reason why pickup trucks can't be designed to pass both as well. Lee Thompson, NBC News, Washington.
And in Texas, Andrea Yates, the Houston mother who confessed to police that she drowned all 5 of her children, was in court this morning. She was formally charged with capital murder and asked for a court-appointed attorney. The children will be buried together in Houston on Wednesday. And another horrible crime involving children is stirring up difficult questions tonight in Great Britain. People there are outraged at the decision to release 2 boys who murdered a toddler. NBC's Ron Allen has more now from London.
Tonight, there's shock and disbelief across Britain as 2 of the nation's most notorious young killers gained freedom. Robert Thompson and John Venables were 10 when a mall security camera saw them kidnap 2-year-old James Bulger in February 1993. A court convicted them of torturing the toddler to death, then leaving his body in the path of a freight train. The community was so enraged, a riot nearly erupted when police took the 2 boys to trial. Today, Britain's parole board, after secret hearings, decided both, now 18, are no longer a danger, have shown remorse, and should be released from a youth detention program with new identities. Bulger's mother fought a desperate court battle for the teenagers to be sent to prison.
She absolutely is devastated by this news. She believes that she and her family are the ones that are being punished.
Are you angry? Are you irritated?
In Bulger's hometown of Liverpool, many don't think the teenagers have been punished enough.
Because I don't think that justice has been served.
Now, Bulger's parents are urging anyone who can to expose the killers' new identities. But the British courts are taking drastic steps to protect them, making it illegal to show pictures of them as adults on television or in newspapers. Already, police are investigating how a recent photo of Thompson may have been released to the public. And other reports say people sympathetic to the Bulger family are offering a bounty or reward for anyone who can track down the 2 young men.
There will be witch hunts, people looking for them. I don't agree with that, but they will go out, and they will have to live looking over their shoulder all the time.
Even James Bulger's father has been quoted as saying he will hunt them down. The British courts have given Thompson and Venables freedom, but they may be on the run for the rest of their lives. Ron Allen, NBC News, London.
Still ahead tonight, American tourists living it up in Cuba. Why are so many flocking to what is supposed to be forbidden territory? Up next, NBC News in depth tonight, medicine's new early detection system, full-body X-ray scans. But is this really overkill? First, the nightly news question. What year was the first X-ray equipment used in the United States? The answer when we come back. NBC News in depth tonight, medicine's controversial new wave, the full-body CT scan, a sophisticated X-ray that can turn up health problems early on. First, the answer to the nightly news question. What year was the first X-ray equipment used in the U.S.? It was way back in 1896. Now, the technology is so advanced, doctors can get an almost perfect picture of your body's inner workings. So why the controversy? In depth, here's NBC's chief science correspondent, Robert Bazell.
Robert Boyle saw some ads on TV and decided to protect his health. He would spend more than $1,300 to get a full-body scan. High-tech computerized X-rays called CT scans from his neck down to his legs to try to find early signs of cancer, heart disease, and other problems.
I think it's just good common sense for a person to get a good, clear indication of what's going on inside their body, especially when you start getting older.
Sounds reasonable. A highly detailed look at much of the body. And many of the dozens of new for-profit clinics that offer it advertise heavily. But the practice is controversial because no one has completed tests of the long-term risks and benefits. Dr. John Cardella was part of an FDA committee that looked into the issue.
There's not good scientific evidence at this point that demonstrates any effectiveness of this whole-body CT screening procedure.
The American College of Radiology says for patients with no symptoms or family history of disease, the test will find lots of insignificant things that will result in increased patient anxiety, unnecessary follow-up examinations and treatments, and significant wasted expense.
There's not much the FDA or professional societies can do about the proliferation of whole-body scanning. Once a device like a CT scanner is approved, doctors can use it for almost anything they want.
And the biggest concern of all, radiation. A full-body scan exposes a person to about 260 times as much as a conventional chest X-ray.
Patients who come in for screening CT examinations, if they do it in a repeated fashion, are setting themselves up for an increased risk of cancer further down the road.
At Inside Track, the Beverly Hills clinic where Boyle went, the owners say the radiation danger is far less than potential life-saving benefits.
We don't have that data yet, but we're one of the companies, I think, that will really begin to develop that data.
But until the proof is in, many experts say, healthy people like Robert Boyle are paying a lot of money for an unproven benefit. Robert Bazell, NBC News, New York.
Still ahead tonight, remembering a gifted actor who made Americans laugh. Think Carol O'Connor.
You don't know nothing about Lady Liberty standing there in a harbor.
On Wall Street today, the market fell, led by warnings from the drug giant Merck about its earnings. As a result, the Dow was off more than 110 points. NASDAQ lost almost 24 on the day. For the week, the Dow was down 19 points, but NASDAQ was up for the week more than 6 points. And the federal government has a helpful reminder as the travel season begins to heat up. Stay out of Cuba. U.S. tourists are officially banned from that island. Restrictions could get even tighter next month. But it turns out all that is making it only more attractive to Americans. NBC's Andrea Mitchell tonight reporting from Havana.
It is only 90 miles from the U.S., yet forbidden territory to most Americans, officially on the State Department's list of terrorist states, off limits to American investors and business. So what are all these Americans doing here?
What you do is you call the Coast Guard and they fax you a sheet and you list on it the passport numbers and the names of everyone on board.
Thousands of U.S. citizens visiting Cuba on so-called cultural exchanges, but often looking a lot like ordinary tourists.
You can come with universities. There's all different ways to get here legally.
With their dollars, Americans bring their influences and culture, from movie star Kevin Costner to rock and roll, illegal here in the 60s, now the latest craze for Cuban teenagers. Even in this Havana park, a statue of Lenin. Not the communist leader, but the Beatle, paid for by the same government that once banned his records from Cuban radio. Everywhere you go, there are new signs of economic growth. An estimated 5% last year, enough to keep Castro's regime in power, but not enough to make life easy for his people. Olga Garcia, at 60, retired from the trade ministry, struggles to live on her pension, the equivalent of $6.47 a month.
You need money for food, for clothes, for shoes, for meals.
So like most Cubans, Olga works on the side, in her case teaching English in her home to Cubans.
Even though more than 100,000 Americans will visit Cuba this year, as long as the U.S. continues to ban trade and investment, this country will never be able to truly grow and prosper.
And under the embargo law, next month President Bush must decide whether to tighten the sanctions, unless Castro meets U.S. demands to hold free elections and release political prisoners. Demands Cuban leaders say the U.S. has no right to make.
The State Department has no right whatsoever. It's not their business to pretend that another country should be different.
Possibly setting the stage for a new crisis with Castro, even as Cubans and Americans establish new bonds. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Havana.
In a moment, saying goodbye to Carol O'Connor. Before he was Archie Bunker, he was Carol O'Connor, a gifted actor, thoughtful and intelligent, the antithesis of the character that he created. It's a tribute to his life that when he died last night, he was both Carol O'Connor and also Archie Bunker, distinctive and memorable. Tonight, the creator of All in the Family, Norman Lear, and Carol O'Connor's fellow actor, Rob Reiner, remember in their own words.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but you are one dumb polo.
Probably the most indelible character ever to be seen on American television. It was on Saturday night, and everybody changed their schedules to accommodate watching All in the Family. And so that on Monday morning when they came to work, they all had this shared national experience.
If you're going to have a change of life, you got to do it right now. I'm going to give you just 30 seconds. Now, come on, Jay!
For the first time, All in the Family changed the way in which people's family lives were depicted. And it opened a dialogue every week about race relations and the women's movement and the war in Vietnam, homosexuality.
I never said a guy who wears glasses is a queer. A guy who wears glasses is a four-eyes. A guy who is a fag is a queer.
He loved playing the character because it allowed him to expose the ignorance of bigotry.
3.
His contribution to television and American laughter, indelible. The world that lives today will never forget Archie Bunker. He'll always be there. And that was Carroll O'Connor.
Headliners and Legends will have a look at the life of Carroll O'Connor tonight at 10 Eastern on MSNBC on cable. That's nightly news for this Friday night. Don't forget Dateline tonight at 9. I'm Tom Brokaw. I'll be taking some time off. Brian Williams will be here. You have a wonderful summer.